All right, everybody. Huge question in the world of MMA right now, and it will continue up until the rematch between Kamaru Usman and Leon Rocky Edwards is, can Kamaru come back and regain the success, regain the title that he previously had? So I want to go over some things that potentially led to his downfall and some things that he's going to have to overcome in trying to regain that title. So first, probably the broadest thing that he had to deal with leading up to that fight was just this whole pressure of being the GOAT. This whole talk about being the GOAT, which is it's pretty funny that so much time is put on that in the media, considering it's not even a real thing. There's no objective set of rules that says someone is the GOAT. It's merely what every person who talks about it thinks. That's it. It's just an opinion. Is it record? Is it how they actually fight? Do you add in their outside life in the GOAT conversation? Like, John Jones clearly is fucked up a million times. Does that count in the GOAT talk? So all of that talk leading up to this fight with Kamaru, and he talked about it as well. Now, some of that is driven by media asking him questions, but believe me, that is in his head. Someone who is that hyper competitive to get to that level, as a UFC champion, he's definitely thinking about that GOAT talk no matter what he says. Definitely GOAT talk is huge. The record setting that he potentially had the ability to do in that fight, to tie Anderson Silva for the most defenses. And he obviously came up short, but having that pressure on you, knowing you're about to do that, you are about to enter into an elite status, and forever be cemented in the history books. And that pressure is there. I don't care what anybody says. It may not be on the tip of their tongue. They may not talk about it every single day, but it's in here. It's in the back of their head, right? So that is another thing that he was dealing with and leading up to that fight. And I think that definitely wears on you mentally. Definitely, I haven't had to deal with that, and almost nobody has. But when it's just constantly talked about and it's an expectation that others want you to live up to and you want to live up to that, it's going to be taxing on you. It's definitely something you're going to be thinking about all the time, which is going to take focus away from what you should be thinking about, which is your fight preparation and the opponent in front of you. Something that I think is overlooked a lot is title fight pressure. And not so much the fight itself. We'll get more into that in a second. But the fight itself, definitely, being the champion, you need to, it's like king of the mountain, right? You're on top of it and you have to defend it. Everyone else is coming up to you. So that puts pressure on you. If your competitor doesn't beat you, well, you were the champion. You were probably the favorite anyway. It's kind of the way it was supposed to go. But you being the king of the mountain, if you lose, that's major. And it's something that you're always going to have to think about, is defending that territory, defending that belt, defending the cage, defending your legacy. Now, this is more what I was talking about. What people don't think about is training for 5-round fights. You've got to think, your opponent's coming up. They may have to train for a 5-round fight if they're a main event in a show leading up to your fight. But other than that, it's 3-round fights. So the amount of preparation you have to put in for your fights is less. Every single fight Kamaru Usman trained for in the past several years has been a 5-round fight. That is grueling. That is taxing on the body. I have trained for 5-round fights. I have trained people training for 5-round fights. And that is really, really tough. Mentally, knowing what you're about to have to go through, and physically, just the extra rounds you have to put in, the extra time, the extra minutes on the mat. That is extremely difficult, and people don't think about that. I think that is a huge, huge factor leading up to title fights with these guys who have defended the belt numerous times. Now, to go along with that, the age of someone who has defended their title numerous times, they're probably a little bit older in the game. Maybe not necessarily their age as far as their physical age, but the amount of time that they have spent in the sport. And then with Kamaru, he goes back to wrestling too. A little bit different, but still the same as far as the amount of time that you put prepping for competition, right? And that is very mentally taxing on somebody. It doesn't get easier, I'll tell you that. At 44 years old and trained for competitions since I was 10 years old, it's very difficult to keep that desire, right? I don't feel it is your physical age that holds you back unless you're talking about the top level, like an Olympian in a sprint. 1 millisecond, literally, losing a step will affect you, right? You're out of contention then. I don't think in MMA it's the same. There's so many ways to win that I don't think, being a little bit older has near as much effect as people think it does. I think it has to do with the desire. If you're 37, 38, 40, whatever, at that point, you just don't want to get up for camps anymore. You don't want to train as hard anymore. Going into a camp, you know how tough it's going to be. It's a dread. It's like weight cutting. I've cut weight for 29 years. It does not get easier. Knowing you're about to have to lose 15 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever, that is awful. It wears on you. And these are all things that someone at the highest level like Kamaru has to deal with. All fighters have to deal with the weight cut and everything, but he's been at the top of the mountain for so long, dealing with these challengers, that it becomes a drain on you. Now, on the other side, what the competition looks at, all the competitors, probably all the top 10 guys, they've been looking at Kamaru for a while. Every one of them has thought about how they would match up against a champion. They may have even talked to their coaches about it. Hey, if I were to get the shot, what would we do? They're watching tape on Kamaru because he's the top guy, right? They're probably not watching fights on the number 6 guy, unless they think that they're about to fight him. That's just not the guy who's in the front of their mind. So they're not thinking about them, while everybody's thinking about Kamaru, right? They're trying to pick out his physical tendencies, his physical weaknesses, mental lapses in his game that they can take advantage of, thinking about his age, his desire, all those things that we already talked about. Very important that the champion stays on top of his game, man. He has to find the love in the sport and the passion to get in there and train every day, which is hard. And he doesn't have the ability to kind of look down and break all these fighters down to the one who's going to fight them. They're all coming up to him. That's why a lot of times people say it's easier to get the belt than hold the belt, right? And I think those are really big issues. The other thing is just the invincibility of the champion is now broken. He was on a 19-fight win streak. It seems like it's just insurmountable to beat this guy. You get in there and you start fighting him, and obviously you had your game plan. You see things that you want to exploit, and he starts shutting them down. Say, oh yeah, I see why this guy's won 19 in a row, and you're just going to become another statistic. So that is gone now. You see that Kamaru can be beat. And in this case of Leon Edwards, he was the one that beat him. And now he has said many times that he feels that he fought terribly, and I mean, he did. The first round was good. So he's super confident, thinking he can go in there. He can get beat almost the entire fight, 19 minutes and 3 seconds, and still come out and win the fight. So that's big on him. Conversely, Kamaru knows that he can win the fight. He made one little mental error. It wasn't like he got taken down over and over and over again, and now he has to work his wrestling endlessly. He just needs to stay a little mentally sharp for the entire fight. And if you watch my last breakdown of what happened in that fight with Kamaru and Leon, Kamaru just decided to coast. and he got caught. And guarantee he won't do that this time. I don't know if he'll win. He's probably going to win. He's the favorite, but it's something that he has to keep in mind. That his invincibility is gone. All those records are gone. He'll never get the opportunity to do that again at his age, right? And I mean, he had talked about retirement too. So how invested is he in getting this title back? Now, there's been interviews with him where he seemed really happy and everything. The weights lifted off his shoulders, which you hear that from a lot of champions who've had these long runs. Matt Hughes, for example, he said the same thing. But he is a competitor, and he wants to get it back. It is hurting him probably more than he's letting on. Excuse me. All right. Now, the real physical side, the concussion, which I have interviewed neuroscientists before. They say when you lose consciousness, it is, yes, guaranteed concussion. People talk about, such a bad knockout. Well, I don't know if we really know if it was a bad knockout. He went stiff. He went out. He took one shot to do that. Arguably taking a beating for 15 or 25 minutes, whatever. Think about Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald. Think about that fight and how much, even though they didn't go unconscious, think about the amount of damage they had to their brains. Let's look at boxing with Meldrick Taylor and Julio Cesar Chavez. Meldrick Taylor was never the same after that. You can look at videos of him being interviewed. The guy didn't talk the same. Timothy Bradley and I believe it was Prodnikov in boxing as well. Timothy Bradley won the fight, but was so badly beaten in that fight, he actually had to have speech therapy to get himself back on track. So even though Kamaru was concussed, how bad is it? I mean, no concussions are good, but I think it could have been a lot worse. Now he looks good on his videos, but what kind of post-concussion syndrome is affecting him? Now I'm sure that he's taken time off. He probably hasn't trained since then, which is very, very smart. I think he needs to take some time off. Just from the fight camp alone and the hype of the fight, the letdown, all that, he needs some time away, not to mention his brain just got shook. So post-concussion syndrome, for those that don't know, you might feel fine, and then as soon as you start training, when your heart rate elevates, you get all concussion syndrome, concussion symptoms again, which would be dizziness, fogginess, anxiety can go through the roof. I've had concussion where my anxiety just went through the roof. It was a really rough, dark time for me. And maybe he's dealing with that behind closed doors, and he's just, trying to look like a champion, like it doesn't affect him. We really don't know how bad it's affecting him. Post-concussion syndrome is a real thing, and it can take an indefinite amount of time to fix. It's very hard. There are ways that are coming out that people can try to build themselves back up, taking themselves right up to the brink of getting those concussion symptoms again and then backing off. But, I've known guys who have been knocked out and just been immediately fine, seemed great. I've known guys that have just been hit too hard, and it took months. I was not knocked out in the one time that I had a diagnosed concussion. It took 2 months for me to feel normal again. So that's something that Kamaru is going to have to deal with as well. Now, looking at notable fighters that have lost and what it's done to their career. Now, this is big. Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva was on a 17-fight win streak. Post-loss, 1 win, 7 losses, 1 draw. Part of that is his own confidence, his age in the sport at the time, desire. Does he want to do it again? He feels like he needs to do it again. This is what he's done his whole life. That's what he's going to continue to do. Is it the right move? I don't know. I mean, his record doesn't show it. Now, he's looking good in boxing now, but for MMA, it was a massive decline in one of the all-time great champions that MMA has ever seen. Now we have Renan Barão. Renan Barão, 32 wins in a row post-loss, 3 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw. Another massive drop-off. Jose Aldo, 18 win streak. Post that loss, his first loss in 18 fights, 6 wins, 7 losses. Conor McGregor, 15-fight win streak. After his loss, 3 wins, 4 losses. All of these guys were pound for pound greats. The top of the line after one loss have losing records after that. And we've got 9 fights for Anderson, 11 fights for Hennen, and 13 fights for Jose Aldo, 7 fights for Conor, and all of them have losing records after that. Pound for pound greats, all champions. So Usman, 19-fight win streak snapped. What's he going to do? How's he going to come back? How is he going to rectify the situation between his ears? It was not physical. So let's say that he doesn't have major concussion issues that he has to deal with. It's all going to be the mental aspect that he needs to rebuild from and deal with all those things that we spoke about in this video. So we'll see if he can come back and do it. Not to mention he has to fight Leon Edwards, the guy that just beat him, most likely in his home country. He will be booed. Usman will be booed, and the cheers will be insane for Leon Edwards. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this gave you some information about your own career. Hopefully you can use this information and found it interesting. Appreciate it.